She was the smallest human in the academy, mocked even by her own squad. Aliens called her a joke, a mistake in uniform, but no one noticed the strange way the apex predator, the galaxy's most feared beast, watched her from the shadows. The Galactic Military Academy was not a place for weakness. The walls were built from stone, quarried from dead worlds, scarred from wars fought thousands of years ago. Its banners carried the names of soldiers who had conquered entire fleets. Every corridor echoed with discipline, drills, and the clash of training weapons. Recruits came here from hundreds of alien species. Some were towering reptilians, covered in thick armor-like scales. Others were six-limbed insectoids, their sharp mandibles clicking in rhythm with their march. Still others were creatures of shadow and smoke, their bodies flickering like fire when they moved. And then there was Sarah Vale, the smallest figure in the academy. A thin, human girl from a world barely respected among the stars. While other recruits towered over her, Sarah seemed out of place, like a child lost in a battlefield. Her uniform looked too big for her shoulders. Her frame lacked muscle. Her movements lacked power. She carried her weapon as though it were heavier than she was. The academy was built to break the weak. And to everyone who looked at her, Sarah was already broken. "Look at her," a reptilian cadet hissed as Sarah struggled to lift a training weight. His scaled lips pulled back into something that might have been a grin or a snarl. "Is that truly a soldier? Humans must be desperate." Laughter spread through the group. Insectoid recruits clicked their mandibles together in amusement. A massive, wolf-like alien growled a mocking sound, mimicking her voice as she grunted under the weight. Even the humans in her squad kept their distance. They whispered behind her back, "She'll wash out. She won't last a week." Sarah heard every word, and though she stood tall, her hands trembled as she set down the weight. The drill sergeant, a battle-scarred alien with tusks sharpened into knives, barked at the recruits. "Strength, power, resolve. That is what makes a soldier. The weak will be crushed, the unfit will be cast out. No mercy for those who cannot endure." His yellow eyes fell on Sarah. "You, human! Step forward." Sarah froze. Her heart thumped against her ribs. She swallowed hard and stepped into the open space. The other cadets sneered, waiting for her to humiliate herself again. The sergeant tossed her a shock baton. "Fight!" A towering insectoid recruit stepped forward, taller than 3 men, its carapace gleaming under the academy lights. It raised its clawed arms, eager to tear her apart in a demonstration. The whistle blew. Sarah swung. Too slow, too weak. The insectoid caught her strike and flung her to the floor. Gasps and laughter erupted. She struggled to rise, only to be knocked down again, her weapon clattering across the ground. "Pathetic!" the sergeant roared. The insectoid loomed over her, ready to strike the final blow. But instead of finishing her, it paused, smirking. In its alien way, it wanted her humiliation to last longer. Sarah's face burned red. Pain shot up her arms. But deeper than the pain, deeper than the shame, there was something else, something hard and unyielding in her chest. She crawled forward, snatched her weapon and tried again. The insectoid batted her aside as though she were nothing. The sergeant called the fight off. "Enough! Human, unfit, you bring shame to your people." Sarah staggered to her feet, blood on her lip, pride broken. She wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Instead, she saluted, quiet, determined, refusing to let them see her cry. But everyone saw her defeat, and everyone laughed. That night, Sarah sat alone in the barracks. Around her, other recruits boasted about victories, about weapons, about the battles they dreamed of fighting. She stayed silent, staring at her hands. Weak, small, a joke. Maybe they were right. Maybe she didn't belong here, but then a sound came, a deep growl, low, dangerous. It came from the far end of the facility, where the cages were kept. The Galactic Military Academy was not only a place for training soldiers, it was also where they kept the galaxy's greatest weapons. The Monsters captured from war zones, beasts bred for battle, predators taken from worlds where even armies dared not tread, and in the largest cage of all was the apex predator. It was said to be the last of its kind, taken from a world where it had wiped out everything that lived. It stood taller than a tank, its body armored with jagged bone and muscle, its eyes glowing with a savage primal light. Its claws could cut through steel, its roar could shatter the courage of armies. Even the bravest recruits avoided its cage, but tonight Sarah heard it. She should have run. Instead, she walked closer. The predator paced in the shadows of its cage, its claws scraping against the reinforced floor. Its breath was a hiss, its chest rising and falling with hunger and fury. Sarah froze in front of the bars. The predator stopped, its glowing eyes fixed on her. Every story she had heard came rushing back. How it had torn apart an entire battalion in minutes. How it had hunted ships through space. How no weapon had ever truly killed it. It had only been captured through traps and luck. And now it was staring at her. Her throat went dry. She took a step back, her boots scraping against the floor. The sound echoed in the silence. The predator growled deep and thunderous. Sarah's breath caught in her chest. She felt its fury, its hunger, its unstoppable strength. And then something strange happened. The predator lowered its head. The galaxy's deadliest beast bowed to her. Gasps erupted from the shadows. Sarah spun around. She wasn't alone. Other recruits had followed her, hoping to watch her humiliate herself. Again! Instead, they witnessed the impossible. The apex predator, one alien whispered. It bowed. Another recruit stumbled back, fear in his voice. That's not possible. The predator's glowing eyes never left Sarah. It stayed still, its massive body crouched, as though waiting for her command. For the first time, no one laughed. No one dared to, and Sarah Vale, the weakest recruit in the academy, stood frozen. In front of the cage, her hands trembling, her heart pounding, as the galaxy's most feared monster lowered its head to her. When the monster that tore apart whole armies bent its head to a weak human, the academy froze. No one laughed now. Something impossible had just happened, and no one understood why. The apex predator's head remained bowed, its jagged horns almost brushing the reinforced floor of its cage. Its massive chest rose and fell with deep, steady breaths. Its glowing eyes never looked away from Sarah Vale. The recruits who had followed her stood in stunned silence. Only moments ago they had come to laugh at her again. But what they saw now silenced every voice, every sneer, every cruel whisper. The weakest recruit, the galaxy's deadliest beast, and somehow submission. One of the insectoid recruits, his mandibles twitching nervously, broke the silence. "This is a trick. It must be." "No trick," whispered another. "That thing doesn't bow to anyone, not even the generals." The wolf-like alien cadet growled, his ears pinned back. "I saw it tear through armored soldiers like paper during the war. That monster never bowed. Never. Not once." Their eyes turned back to Sarah. She stood frozen, trembling in her boots, staring at the predator in disbelief. Her mind raced. She hadn't spoken. She hadn't moved. She hadn't done anything at all. And yet, the apex predator bowed. The sound of heavy boots thundered down the corridor. A squad of armed guards rushed in, weapons raised, their armor gleaming in the dim light. At their head came a tall officer, her face lined with scars, her eyes sharp as steel. "What is this disturbance?" she barked. The recruit stumbled aside, pointing toward the cage. The officer's gaze snapped forward and froze. Her eyes widened. Her hand tightened on her weapon. She had seen the predator rip men apart with those same claws. She had heard it roar, seen it smash through walls, watched it kill without hesitation, but never had she seen it bow. "Explain," she demanded, her voice low and dangerous. No one spoke. The silence was thick, suffocating. Finally, a reptilian recruit pointed at Sarah. "It bowed to her. The officer's eyes narrowed. To her? The human weakling. Sarah flinched at the word. Weakling, always the same word, but this time something was different, because the officer didn't sound like she was mocking her. She sounded afraid. The guards raised their rifles. The apex predator growled in response, its massive frame shifting, its claws scraping against the floor. The whole cage seemed to shake as it let out a sound like thunder rolling across a battlefield. Sarah gasped, stumbling back, then stopped. The predator's growl wasn't directed at her. It was directed at them, the soldiers, the officers. It was protecting her. The officer raised a hand, signaling her men to hold their fire. Her scarred face twisted, caught between disbelief and fear. "Get the commander. Now." One of the guards sprinted off. The others kept their weapons ready, their eyes darting between Sarah and the predator. Minutes stretched like hours. The recruits whispered in hushed voices. Some stared at Sarah with fear. Others looked at her with suspicion. A few with awe, and through it all the predator remained still, bowed, waiting. Finally, the commander arrived. He was an old alien, his skin pale and cracked like stone, his eyes glowing faintly with age and power. He wore a uniform marked with medals from battles fought long before Sarah was born. His presence alone silenced the room. He studied the scene without a word. His gaze moved from the predator to Sarah, back to the predator, back to Sarah. Then he spoke, his voice low but commanding. "Step forward, human." Sarah's legs trembled, but she obeyed. She stepped closer to the cage, every instinct screaming at her to run. The predator's glowing eyes tracked her every move. Then, as if responding to the commander's order, it lowered itself even further, pressing its head against the bars. A gasp rippled through the recruits. The commander's eyes narrowed. He leaned forward, studying Sarah as though she were some puzzle he had never seen before. Finally, he spoke. Again. "Speak to it." Sarah blinked. "What?" "Speak. Give it an order." Her mouth went dry. Her heart hammered in her chest. She looked at the predator, its massive frame trembling with restrained power. Every story she had heard told her one thing. No one controlled this beast. Not weapons, not chains, not fear. And yet, here it was, waiting. She took a shaky breath. "Sit." The predator obeyed. The room erupted in chaos. Recruits shouted. Guards stumbled back in fear. Even the officer's sharp discipline cracked, her mouth falling open in shock. But the commander did not move. His expression remained unreadable, his stone-like face unchanging. He raised a hand, silencing the uproar. His voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Again!" Sarah hesitated, then more firmly this time. "Stand!" The predator rose to its full, terrifying height. Its horns scraped the ceiling of the reinforced cage. Its claws glistened in the dim light. It towered over everyone present, yet its glowing eyes remained locked on Sarah. The recruits stumbled back in fear. Some even dropped their weapons. The commander's expression finally shifted, just slightly. A flicker of something in his eyes, curiosity, and perhaps the smallest trace of fear. He turned to the guards. "Test her. Tomorrow, publicly, before the academy." The officer stiffened. "Sir, if she fails, the beast will kill her," the commander interrupted coldly. "And if she does not fail," his gaze lingered on Sarah, "then the galaxy has changed." That night, word spread across the academy like wildfire. The weakest human recruit, the monster's submission, the impossible truth witnessed. By dozens, by morning, everyone knew. Some called her dangerous, some called her chosen. Others called her a threat, but none of them laughed anymore. The next day, the entire academy gathered in the central arena. Recruits filled the stands, whispering and staring at Sarah as she stood alone on the sand. High-ranking officers sat, In the viewing platform, their eyes fixed on the cage at the far end, the gates rumbled open. The apex predator emerged, its claws clicking against the floor, its breath steaming in the cold morning air. Chains rattled around its neck, held by a squad of guards, but the moment it stepped into the arena, the chains fell slack. It only had eyes for her, Sarah Vale, the weakest human in the academy, and as the galaxy's deadliest beast lowered its head to her in front of thousands, the silence was deafening. The commander's voice echoed through the arena. "Human, prove this is no trick. Command the beast." Sarah's heart pounded. Every eye was on her, every recruit, every officer, every enemy who wanted her to fail. She swallowed hard, then raised her hand. "Come to me." The predator moved, not with violence, not with hunger. It walked across the arena like a warship gliding through space, slow and unstoppable. The ground shook beneath its steps. The air trembled with its presence. It stopped in front of Sarah, lowering its massive head until its glowing eyes met hers, and then it knelt. The arena erupted. Gasps, cries, shouts of disbelief. The officers whispered in panic. The commander leaned forward, his glowing eyes locked on Sarah, and somewhere in the shadows, in the highest seats of the academy, members of the Galactic Council watched in silence. Their faces were hidden, their thoughts unknown, but their whispers were dangerous. If the weakest human can command that, then what else are they hiding? They forced her to prove it wasn't luck. In front of cameras and officers, the predator was unleashed. Everyone expected Sarah to die. Instead, it waited for her orders. The arena floor was scarred from battles past, training duels, sparring matches, and beast trials that had ended in blood. Now it was silent, silent except for the sound of the apex predator's claws scraping against the ground. The galaxy's most feared creature stood in the center, its glowing eyes locked on Sarah Vale. And Sarah stood frozen. She could feel the stares of thousands pressing down on her. Recruits, officers, and hidden council observers watched from the stands, waiting to see if the impossible was real or if the weak human girl would be torn apart in front of them. The commander's voice boomed from above. "This test will decide. If the beast obeys, then the galaxy will witness something new. If it does not," his eyes narrowed, "then nature will take its course." The meaning was clear. If she failed, she would die. The predator shifted, its massive claws gouging lines into the stone floor. A low growl rumbled through its chest, vibrating the air. Some recruits covered their ears, the sound too deep, too primal. Sarah's heart pounded. Her knees trembled, but she remembered the moment in the cage, the bow, the submission. Something had passed between them, though she didn't understand it. She swallowed hard. Then, with a voice louder than she felt, she spoke. "Sit." The predator lowered itself immediately, slamming into the stone with a force that sent dust rising into the air. The crowd gasped. The commander leaned forward, his sharp eyes narrowing. Again, a harder order, one that risks disobedience. Sarah hesitated. Her mind raced. What could she say? Finally, she pointed to a massive steel block placed at the far end of the arena as part of the test. "Lift it." The predator rose, its glowing eyes flashing. It strode to the block, gripped it in its claws, and with a roar that shook the walls, hoisted it into the air. The block, several tons of reinforced steel, snapped in two as the beast hurled it across the arena. The crowd erupted. Some cheered, others shouted in fear, but the commander raised his hand, silencing them. "This proves nothing. The beast may be following instinct, not command." He turned his eyes on Sarah. "Something dangerous, then. Make it do something unnatural." Sarah froze. Unnatural? What could that mean? The officer beside him leaned forward, whispering, "Order it to bow again, to lower itself to her in front of all." The commander nodded. Yes, human. Command it. Sarah licked her lips. Her throat was dry. She looked at the predator, its glowing eyes fixed on her. Her voice was soft, trembling, but it carried through the arena. Bow. The predator bent, its massive head lowered to the sand at her feet. The arena went silent. Every recruit, every officer, every council observer. No one laughed now. From that day forward, Sarah was no longer just a recruit. She became an experiment. The academy forced her into daily training sessions with the predator. Every command she gave was recorded, every gesture analyzed, every breath studied. Scientists hovered nearby with scanners. Officers debated in whispers, and always the predator obeyed. But Sarah noticed something strange. It wasn't just obedience, it was understanding. When she told it to stop, it stopped instantly, even when mid-strike. When she hesitated, it waited patiently. When she stumbled during a drill, it moved to shield her, claws raised as if ready to destroy anything that dared come near. It wasn't a weapon. It was listening. Her fellow recruits reacted in different ways. Some avoided her. Completely, their eyes filled with fear. Others whispered that she must have hidden implants or secret human technology. A few even plotted openly, saying she would bring danger to them all. But not everyone hated her. One night, after training, a fellow human cadet named Daniels approached her. He was tall, broad-shouldered, everything Sarah wasn't. You know, he said quietly, they used to laugh at me too. Not like you, but enough. Sarah raised an eyebrow. You? You're top of the class. Daniels shrugged. Not at first. Took me months before I could even stand in a fight. They called me useless. He smiled faintly. Until I proved them wrong. Sarah looked down. I don't feel like I've proved anything. Daniel's eyes flicked toward the predator, resting in its reinforced cage nearby. Sarah, you command the deadliest creature in the galaxy. You've proved more than anyone here. But Sarah shook her head. No, I don't command it. It chooses to listen. The Academy didn't care what Sarah thought. To them, she was now a weapon to test. Day after day, they increased the difficulty. They set up simulations where the predator had to fight entire squads. They loaded the arena with tanks, drones, and automated turrets. They even unleashed other beasts, lesser monsters captured from war zones. And every time, the predator crushed them all. It fought with terrifying speed and brutal precision, but never did it harm Sarah, not once, not even when explosions blinded it, not even when blades sliced across its body, not even when it was ordered to kill anything that moved. It always spared her, always, but the more Sarah trained, the more she felt the truth pressing down on her. This wasn't luck. This wasn't just obedience. The predator was bound to her in some way. Not by chains, not by fear, not by programming, by choice. And that choice terrified the Academy. Whispers spread beyond the training grounds. The human girl commands the beast. She's dangerous. She must be controlled. Sarah began to notice the looks. Officers studying her with cold eyes, council observers scribbling notes, guards gripping their rifles tighter when she passed. It wasn't just curiosity anymore, it was fear, and fear in the Academy was dangerous. One evening, after a brutal trial where the predator had torn through 20 drones in seconds, Sarah sat on the arena floor, exhausted. The predator crouched nearby, its glowing eyes calm, its breathing steady. She looked up at it. "Why me?" she whispered. The predator tilted its head, almost as if it understood the question. Then, with a rumble that shook her chest, it lowered its head again, closer this time until its glowing eyes were only inches from hers. Her breath caught. It wasn't just a beast. It wasn't just a weapon. It was choosing her. The commander watched from the shadows. Beside him, an officer whispered nervously, "Sir, what are we creating here?" The commander's eyes stayed locked on Sarah and the Predator. His voice was low, grim. Not creating, revealing. And what we see revealed may destroy us all. The next day, the tests grew darker. They ordered Sarah to command the Predator to kill captured prisoners, criminals from other worlds. She froze, horrified. The commander's voice was sharp. "Do it!" Sarah shook her head. "No, it's not a weapon for slaughter." The Predator growled, sensing her distress. Guards tensed, weapons ready, but Sarah raised her hand, steady now, her voice clear. "Stand down!" The Predator obeyed. The silence that followed was heavier than any roar. The commander's eyes narrowed. "She disobeys orders. Dangerous. Too dangerous." That night, Sarah sat awake in the barracks, staring at the ceiling. She knew what was coming. The academy wasn't testing her anymore. They were planning how to separate her from the Predator, planning how to control her. And if they couldn't, she shivered. They would destroy her. The Predator slept in its cage nearby. Its glowing eyes flickered open for just a moment. It rumbled softly, a sound almost like a growl, almost like a warning. Sarah closed her eyes. She didn't know if it could sense her fear, but in that moment she felt something she had never felt before. Not weakness, not humiliation, strength, not hers, but theirs. Together. The Galactic Council met in secret. They didn't see a weak soldier anymore. They saw a weapon, one that could shatter the balance of power. And they were already planning how to erase her. The Galactic Military Academy was built to forge soldiers. But the true power did not rest in the Academy's hands. It rested in the high towers of the Galactic Council, the ruling body that governed empires, fleets, and entire star systems. When word of Sarah Vale spread through the Academy, the Council heard it too. At first, they dismissed it as rumor. A weak human recruit commanding the apex predator? Impossible. But then came reports, videos, witnesses swearing under oath that the beast had bowed, soldiers confessing they had seen the impossible with their own eyes. The council could no longer ignore it, and so they gathered. In a chamber larger than any warship's command deck, the 12 counselors sat in a circle. Their faces were hidden behind silver masks, their voices distorted through the chamber's speakers. Each mask represented a species, a legacy, an empire. The chamber doors locked. The air grew heavy. "Is it true?" one counselor asked, his voice cold. "The apex predator obeys her?" Another replied, her tone sharp as a blade. "True, verified by multiple officers. It kneels on command, it fights on command, it obeys." A murmur rippled through the chamber. "This is unacceptable," hissed a reptilian voice. "That creature slaughtered legions. It broke fleets. It destroyed colonies. And now it bends to a human child? That cannot stand." "She is no child," said another counselor grimly. "She is something else, something dangerous." A holographic projection flickered to life in the center of the chamber. Sarah Vale appeared, standing in the arena beside the towering apex predator, its glowing eyes fixed on her like a loyal beast. The image froze on the moment it bowed. "Look at it," one counselor whispered. "The galaxy's deadliest monster, tamed, not tamed," another corrected. "Aligned, bonded. This is not control, this is choice." "And that," said the eldest counselor, his mask cracked with age, "is what terrifies me most." They began to argue. If humans can command the apex predator, what else can they command? Perhaps they bred her for this, hidden their power until now. No, it must be chance, an accident, a freak connection. Accident or not, the effect is the same. Balance is broken, and if she lives, it will shatter entirely. The eldest counselor raised his hand. Silence fell. "We cannot allow her to live." Back at the academy, Sarah trained again, unaware of the whispers in the chamber light years away. She commanded the Predator through drills, pushing herself harder than ever. Her voice was steadier now, her fear replaced with determination. But she felt the change. The recruits no longer mocked her. They stared at her in silence, some with awe, some with jealousy, some with fear so sharp it burned in their eyes. She had become something more than a recruit, and that made her dangerous. That night, as Sarah left the training grounds, she noticed shadows trailing her. Guards, more than usual. Their hands hovered near their weapons, their gazes cold and calculating. She clenched her fists. Something had shifted. She wasn't safe anymore. In the council chamber, the debate turned darker. She is bonded to the Predator. If we kill her, will it go mad? Perhaps. But if we let her live, humanity will rise. They will use her to gain influence. Armies will bow, empires will fall. Then the answer is simple. Remove her quietly. A mission. A battlefield accident. Silence followed. Then nods. Yes. Make it clean. Yes, make it untraceable. Yes, she must disappear. The eldest counselor's voice was final. Send her to the front. Let the war decide her fate. Either she dies or she becomes someone else's problem. 2 days later, Sarah was summoned to the commander's office. He stood behind a desk of black stone, his expression unreadable. The Predator's growls echoed faintly from the cages outside, but here the silence was sharp. "Cadet Vale," he said, his deep voice rumbling. "Your progress has been noted." Sarah stood stiff, saluting. "Sir, you are to be deployed," the commander continued. "Not for training, for war." Sarah's eyes widened. "War? But I'm still in training." "You are ready enough," he said coldly. "The council has requested it. You and your beast will serve at the front lines." Her throat tightened. She had trained, yes. She had commanded the Predator, yes, but real war, against fleets, against armies. She was not ready, she knew it, but the commander's eyes left no room for argument. "You leave tomorrow." That night, Sarah sat alone in the barracks, staring at the stars through a narrow window. Her chest felt heavy. Was this her chance to prove herself, or the council's way of discarding her? She glanced toward the Predator's cage outside. Its glowing eyes were fixed on her through the bars, unblinking, as if it understood. She whispered, softly, "They're sending us away. To die, maybe." The Predator rumbled low, deep in its chest. A sound not of rage, but of promise. She felt it in her bones. Whatever awaited them out there, she wouldn't face it alone. Back in the council chamber, the plan was finalized. Her squad would be reassigned to her. Recruits who hated her, officers who resented her, soldiers who would not protect her, and the mission was a trap. An enemy ambush had been arranged. Enough firepower to kill her and the Predator both. The council thought it foolproof. The weakest human recruit and her monster would vanish. Balance would be restored, but the council had underestimated one thing: the bond between Sarah Vale and the apex Predator. The mission was a lie. The enemy was waiting. Her squad abandoned her. And the order was simple. The human and her. Beast must not return alive. The transport ship hummed as it cut through the void. Sarah Vale sat strapped into her seat, her knuckles white against the restraints. Around her, the squad whispered in hushed voices, their eyes flicking toward her with thinly veiled contempt. She knew what they thought of her. Weak, fragile, unworthy. Even with the Predator beside her, they didn't trust her. Some hated her, some feared her, and some, she realized now, were just waiting for her to fail. The apex Predator sat in the reinforced chamber at the rear of the ship, its massive form chained only for appearance. The truth was clear. The chains were useless. If it wished to, it could tear the ship apart. But instead, it remained still, its glowing eyes locked on Sarah, like a silent guardian. Sarah's chest tightened. Something about this mission felt wrong. The commander's words echoed in her head. You are to lead this squad into enemy territory, secure an outpost, survive, survive. He had emphasized the word in a way that made her skin crawl. Now as she looked around, she noticed the small details. The soldiers weren't prepared. Their weapons were old, their supplies thin. The briefing had been vague. Too vague. This wasn't an assignment. It was a disposal. Hours later, the transport broke through the black clouds of a war-torn planet. Lightning cracked across the surface. Burnt ruins stretched for miles. The ship shuddered as it descended, rattled by enemy fire from below. Sirens blared. Impact in 60 seconds. Sarah braced herself, heart pounding. The squad swore and cursed, but none looked at her for orders. She wasn't their leader, not in their eyes. She was the burden. The transport hit ground with a violent crash. The rear ramp opened and the squad poured out, firing at shadows in the storm. Sarah followed, her predator bounding behind her with a roar that cut through the thunder. The battlefield was chaos. Blaster fire streaked across the sky. Enemy troops swarmed from the ruined city, their armor gleaming. Sarah's squad scattered, returning fire wildly. At first it seemed like any other battle, but then Sarah saw it. The enemy wasn't aiming for her squad. They were aiming for her. Her chest went cold. This wasn't a war zone. It was a stage. She was the target. Bullets and beams tore through the ground around her. The predator leapt forward, shielding her with its massive body, its hide deflecting shots like armor. It roared, sending enemy soldiers scrambling in terror. Sarah turned to her squad for help, only to see them retreating. One by one, they fell, back toward the transport, abandoning her in the open. "No!" Sarah shouted, her voice breaking. "Hold the line! We can fight!" But they weren't listening. They didn't want to fight. They wanted her dead. And then she heard it. Through the storm, a transmission leaked through her comm. A voice she recognized. Cold, commanding. Ensure the human does not return. Her breath caught. The council. This was no accident, no mission. This was betrayal. The predator sensed it too. Its rage ignited, its body glowing faintly with bioluminescent patterns as it tore through enemy lines. Soldiers screamed as it struck, claws and fangs cutting through armor like paper, but for every enemy it killed, more appeared. Dropships circled above, releasing wave after wave of troops. Sarah realized the truth. There was no victory here, only survival. Her squad boarded the transport, sealing the ramp, leaving her behind. She saw their faces one last time, mocking, relieved, certain she would die. The ship lifted, engines roaring, abandoning her in the storm. She pressed her back to the predator, her rifle shaking in her hands. They were surrounded. The enemy advanced, hundreds of armored figures closing in, weapons glowing in the rain. The predator snarled, blood dripping from its jaws, but even it seemed weary. Sarah's mind raced. Think. The council wanted her gone. The squad wanted her gone. The enemy wanted her gone. But she wasn't going to give them what they wanted. "Listen to me," she whispered to the predator. Its head turned, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "We're not dying here. Not today." It rumbled low in its chest, as if it understood. She raised her rifle. Her voice shook, but it carried. "Then follow me!" The storm swallowed her words, but the predator roared in answer, the sound rolling like thunder across the battlefield. Together they charged. Blaster fire rained down, tearing through the mud around them. Sarah sprinted, sliding behind broken walls, firing in short bursts. The predator tore through enemy lines, ripping apart weapons, tossing soldiers like rag dolls. She fought with everything she had. Her aim was sharper, her instincts faster. Fear no longer paralyzed her. It fueled her. For the first time, she wasn't the weakest. She was alive, and she wasn't alone. Hours passed like minutes. The battlefield burned. enemy corpses littered, the ruins. But the enemy did not stop. From the horizon, war machines advanced, towering walkers bristling with cannons. The ground shook beneath their weight. Sarah's breath hitched. Not even the predator could stop that. The creature growled, stepping in front of her again, ready to fight to the death. "No," Sarah whispered. Her eyes darted across the battlefield, and then she saw it, an old comms relay, shattered but still glowing faintly. Hope sparked in her chest. "If I can reach it," she murmured, "I can send a signal. Call reinforcements." The predator tilted its head, following her gaze. Then it lowered itself, crouching. Sarah climbed onto its back. She gripped its armored hide, her heart hammering. "Go!" The beast launched forward, dodging enemy fire, sprinting across the battlefield like a shadow in the storm. Lasers streaked past her. Explosions shook the ground, but she held on, her teeth clenched, eyes locked on the relay. They reached it in a thunderous crash. Sarah leapt off, slamming. Her hands onto the controls, sparks flew. The system was half dead, fried by years of war. "Come on, come on," she muttered, frantically rewiring cables, bypassing broken circuits. The predator fought at her side, ripping apart machines that tried to approach, its roars echoing across the wasteland. Finally, the console flickered to life. A weak signal pulsed. "This is Cadet Sarah Vale of the Galactic Military Academy," she shouted, her voice hoarse. "Requesting immediate extraction. Coordinates uploading. Enemy ambush. Repeat, ambush." Static answered. Then a faint voice. "Signal received. Hold position." Relief washed over her, but it was short-lived. The enemy walkers turned, weapons charging. They were aiming for the relay. For her. The predator leapt in front of her as the first blast struck. The explosion lit the sky, hurling Sarah backward. Pain seared through her body as she hit the ground. Through the smoke she saw the predator still standing, burned, bleeding, but alive. It growled, forcing itself forward, blocking every shot, shielding her with its body. Tears blurred her vision. "No, don't you dare leave me!" It roared in answer, louder than the storm, as if swearing it never would. And then the sound of engines cut through the chaos. Dropships descended, weapons blazing. Reinforcements had come. The enemy broke ranks, retreating under heavy fire. The walkers fell, torn apart by aerial strikes. Sarah lay trembling in the mud, the predator collapsing beside her, its breathing ragged. But they had survived. Together. Hours. Later, as medics pulled her onto a stretcher, she heard whispers among the soldiers. "She's the one. The human who commands the predator." She lived, and far away in the council chambers, a report reached the masked leaders. The human and the beast survived. Silence. Cold. Heavy. Until one counselor hissed the words none wanted to hear. "Then we failed, and now we must fear her even more." The soldier they mocked now commanded fear. In the middle of war, even veteran warriors turned their heads when she spoke, because the apex predator obeyed her every word. The medics had saved her life, but it wasn't their care that made Sarah Vale stronger. It was survival. She should have been dead, left on a battlefield as bait, abandoned by her squad, buried under waves of enemies. But she hadn't died. She had fought. She had endured. And beside her, the predator had refused to fall. When she opened her eyes in the field hospital, bruised and scarred, the whispers were already there. She lived. She fought the walkers. She called down reinforcements. She commands it. The alien doctors tried not to stare, but their eyes kept drifting to the predator resting outside the medical tent. Its wounds were healing fast, faster than any expected, yet it never moved far from Sarah's cot, as if guarding her even in sleep. And every soldier who walked past felt the weight of its gaze. Within days, Sarah was back on her feet. She should have been sent home to recover, but orders arrived from above. Orders she hadn't expected. Deploy her again. The council wanted her erased, yes, but the officers at the front saw something else, a weapon, and no commander would throw away a weapon that could turn battles. Her next assignment wasn't a trap. It was a real war front, an outpost under siege, cut off by enemy fire. Entire companies had failed to break through. Now they sent her. The transport ship was crowded with soldiers, alien veterans hardened by years of fighting. They had heard the rumors, the human runt with the monster at her side. When Sarah boarded with the predator lumbering behind her, the ship went silent. One soldier muttered under his breath, "That's her." Another swallowed nervously, staring at the predator's glowing eyes. And that's it. No one laughed, no one mocked. They watched her like soldiers watch their commanders, and Sarah felt the shift. For the first time, she wasn't the weakest recruit in the room. She was the one everyone else measured against. The battle for the outpost was brutal. Enemy artillery rained from the ridges, trenches filled with fire and smoke. The defenders were barely holding on. When Sarah's unit arrived, chaos swallowed them immediately. Orders shouted, explosions shaking the ground, panic spreading, and then she did something no one expected. She stepped forward. Her voice rang clear through the comms. "Hold positions! Cover fire on the left ridge! Predator, flank right!" The soldiers froze. She wasn't an officer. She wasn't supposed to give orders. But then the predator roared and obeyed instantly, tearing across the battlefield with terrifying speed. Enemy lines shattered. Soldiers gasped as they saw the impossible. And in that moment, they listened to her. Blasters fired where she pointed. Defenses reinforced where she ordered. The tide turned. By the time the sun rose over the battlefield, the outpost still stood. The enemy had retreated, and Sarah Vale had commanded the victory. Word of it spread faster than fire in dry grass. The runt had led a battle. The runt had made soldiers obey. The runt had made the predator not just a beast of war, but a weapon of strategy. Whispers grew into voices. Voices grew into cheers. "Beast Commander," they called her, but Sarah knew it wasn't victory yet. She sat by the predator that night, stroking the rough hide along its scarred shoulder. "We're not safe," she whispered. "The council wanted me gone. They'll try again." The predator's low rumble filled the night. Not fear, not doubt, but defiance. It would follow her into fire, into war, into death. And she realized so would others. The next weeks changed everything. Every battle she fought, more soldiers turned to her, at first reluctantly, then eagerly. Veterans who had mocked her began to salute her without hesitation. Even officers, at first furious that she gave commands, eventually bowed to necessity. She won battles they could not, and with every victory her legend grew. But so did the council's fear. In their shadowed chamber, the silver-masked rulers seethed as new reports arrived. She commands platoons now, entire platoons. Soldiers obey her over their own captains. She is more dangerous than we feared, the eldest counselors. Voice dripped with venom. We gave her to war, hoping it would break her. Instead, war forged her. She must be stopped, another hissed. If she rises any higher, we cannot contain her. But another voice, sharp and cautious, whispered, the words none wanted to admit, perhaps it is already too late. Back at the front, Sarah Vale stood taller now. The uniform that once seemed too big for her shoulders fit with ease. Her eyes no longer carried the look of fear, but of someone who had faced betrayal and lived. The soldiers around her didn't see a weak human anymore. They saw a commander, and when she spoke, even the predator, the deadliest creature in the galaxy, lowered its head and obeyed. But as the stars wheeled overhead, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling of eyes watching her. The council had not forgotten, and she knew the next move wouldn't just be a trap. It would be war. The council sent their weapon, a predator engineered to kill, bred for one purpose, destroy Sarah and her monster. The battlefield would tremble, and only one beast would survive. The war front had grown hotter than ever. Sarah Vale, now called the Beast Commander by her soldiers, led her platoon through ruined cities and blasted plains. Her victories had become legend, but the Council's fear had turned into action. Reports arrived one evening. The enemy had brought a new creature, larger than any war beast in history, faster, stronger, bred for destruction. And it was headed straight for her. Sarah's stomach clenched. She had survived betrayal, ambush, and entire armies. But this was different. The predator at her side growled low, sensing the same danger she did. Its eyes glowed brighter than ever, claws scraping the ground, ready for battle. "Whatever it is," she whispered, gripping its hide, "we face it together." The first sight of the enemy was apocalyptic. From the stormy horizon emerged a creature unlike any Sarah had ever seen. Its scales shimmered with metallic hues. Its horns curved forward like scythes. Its eyes glowed a deep crimson. The soldiers around her froze. The predator's growl shook the earth beneath their feet. Even seasoned veterans stumbled back in terror, and then it roared. The sound rolled across the battlefield like thunder, a promise of death. The engineered predator had been designed to kill, every movement precise, every strike lethal, every instinct sharpened for combat. Sarah raised her hand. "Hold positions. Observe its behavior first." The soldiers obeyed, a mixture of fear and awe written across their faces. The predator lowered its head, growling, watching the enemy move. The two beasts locked eyes. A tense silence fell. Then, with a roar, they charged. The ground shook beneath them. Dust and debris flew in all directions. The soldiers fired, but their weapons were useless. Both predators moved faster than any human or alien could track. Claws clashed against claws. Fangs tore through steel. The roar of the engineered predator was answered by the deep, echoing growl of Sarah's companion. The battle raged like a storm. The enemy predator lunged at Sarah's beast, jaws snapping. But the apex predator twisted mid-air, catching its attacker's horn in a vice-like grip. Sparks flew as claws struck armored scales. Sarah's voice rang out, "Flank left! Don't break formation!" The soldiers obeyed, moving with precise coordination. For the first time, they weren't just surviving, they were fighting as a unit under her command. The engineered predator's eyes glowed with malice. Every strike was lethal, every maneuver calculated, but it had underestimated one thing, the bond between Sarah and her predator. A glance, a gesture, a word. And the apex predator responded instantly. They moved as one. She barked a single order. "Take the high ground!" The predator obeyed, leaping onto a ruined building, dragging the engineered beast after it. From above, it was a brutal dance of claws, fangs, and teeth. The enemy predator struck with ferocity, but Sarah's beast was faster, smarter, anticipating every move. Minutes felt like hours. The battlefield was littered with debris and fallen soldiers, though none of her own had been lost under her command. The predator's strategy was astonishing. It fought not with blind fury, but with precision. Sarah's heart pounded in rhythm with the clash of the titans. She shouted orders, directing soldiers to fire on exposed flanks, to set traps, to cut off escape routes, and slowly, the enemy predator began to falter. It had underestimated one factor, Sarah's determination. With a final roar, the apex predator struck. Its claws caught the engineered predator mid-leap, tossing it against a ruined wall with bone-crushing force. Sparks and blood flew. The creature roared in pain, staggering to its knees. Sarah's voice rang out, steady and commanding. "Finish it!" The apex predator lunged, jaws snapping around the enemy's neck. A final deafening roar echoed as the engineered predator collapsed, defeated. Silence fell. The storm ceased. The soldiers stared in awe. The apex predator stood victorious, towering over the battlefield. Its eyes glowed with loyalty, fixed on Sarah. Sarah stumbled forward, tears in her eyes. She had survived betrayal, ambush, and now a weapon designed to kill her. And the beast at her side had obeyed, had fought, and had triumphed. The soldiers around her cheered, their fear replaced with admiration. They had witnessed something beyond legend. From the sky, the Council's agents watched, hidden, aboard observation craft. Their reports were grave. She commands a predator capable of defeating our engineered weapon. She survived betrayal and ambush. She is unstoppable. The eldest counselor's voice trembled with rage and fear. This human, this girl, she is beyond our control. Back at the battlefield, Sarah knelt beside her predator, stroking its massive head. Its breathing was heavy, but it nuzzled her hand as if to say, "We survived, together." Her soldiers gathered around her, looking at her with respect and fear. They no longer saw a weak human recruit, they saw a leader. And somewhere deep in the shadows, Sarah understood a truth that terrified her as much as it empowered her. The Council would not stop. They would send more, stronger, deadlier. But as long as she had the predator, she had hope. And as long as she had hope, she would rise. The galaxy held its breath. Every empire, every counselor, every soldier watched. A human and her apex predator stood ready to change the balance of power forever. The battlefield stretched across a shattered planet, its surface cracked and scorched from endless war. Smoke rose in black clouds, masking the horizon. In the distance, fleets of alien warships hovered, poised to strike. Sarah Vale stood at the forefront, her uniform scorched and mud-stained. Her eyes scanned the horizon, glowing faintly with determination. Behind her, the apex predator shifted, massive claws scraping the ground, growling low, a warning to all who dared approach. For months, the Council had tried to erase her. Ambushes, engineered predators, sabotage squads. Nothing had worked, and now they were sending their final gambit. The ultimate weapon, a fleet of the deadliest ships, armed with the most destructive technology in the galaxy, all pointed at her. The message was clear: bow or die. The soldiers around her looked to Sarah. Veterans who once doubted her now waited for her command. Young recruits, inspired by her legend, held their positions with unwavering focus. And Sarah, she felt the weight of all those eyes. All that expectation pressing down on her. She glanced at the apex predator. Its glowing eyes met hers. No fear, only loyalty, only readiness. She whispered, barely audible, "Are you ready?" The predator's low rumble echoed across the battlefield, almost like a growl of affirmation. Sarah straightened. She would not. Bow! From the skies, the enemy fleet descended, massive ships bristling with weapons, cutting through the clouds with terrifying speed. Their lasers streaked across the battlefield, incinerating anything in their path. "Hold the line!" Sarah shouted. "Do not fire until I give the command!" Her soldiers froze, tension crackling like electricity in the air, and then she stepped forward, toward the center of the battlefield, her hands raised in a single gesture. The apex predator mirrored her movements, bowing its massive head, not in submission, but in a gesture of readiness. The soldiers gasped. They had seen it before. The bow was not fear, it was trust. And it meant only one thing. When she commanded, the galaxy would obey. The enemy commander's voice boomed over the comms. "Human Vale, bow! Surrender your monster, or all will be destroyed." Sarah's lips curled into a faint smile. "Bow? I do not bow, but the beast bows to me, and so do I, to no one else." With that, she signaled the predator, a single subtle motion. The beast sprang forward, faster than any ship's weapons could track. It crashed through enemy defenses, tearing apart ground units, flipping tanks like toys. Soldiers scattered, screams echoing. Sarah's platoon followed, moving in perfect synchronization. Every order she gave was obeyed immediately, every strategy executed flawlessly. She wasn't just a commander now. She was a force of nature. The enemy fleet retaliated. Massive lasers swept the battlefield. Ships hovered overhead, dropping weapons capable of annihilating entire platoons in a single strike. But Sarah did not panic. Her mind raced. She had survived ambushes, engineered predators, betrayal, and war, and now she would face the galaxy itself. She raised her voice steady and commanding. "Flank the left ridge. Set up ion disruptors. Predator, take the central line." The soldiers obeyed. The apex predator obeyed. And as they moved, a strange thing happened. The enemy soldiers hesitated, fleets faltered. Even the most disciplined units couldn't comprehend what they were facing. A human commanding a beast capable of tearing through all of them. Fear spread faster than lasers. Hours of combat passed. The battlefield became a blur of fire and steel. Ships exploded in brilliant arcs of light. Tanks burned. Soldiers fell. Yet Sarah and her apex predator pressed forward, unstoppable. She noticed the enemy commander watching from a flagship. He was calm, confident, until he saw the predator leap into the air, landing atop a hovering gun platform, dismantling it with crushing force. "Impossible," he muttered. "It should not obey her so perfectly. It should not fight like this." Sarah's voice carried across the comms to her soldiers. "Hold steady, focus, one final push." The apex predator roared, a sound that echoed across the planet. It leapt between ships, smashing weapons, scattering enemy troops, creating a path directly for Sarah. Her soldiers surged forward, following her lead, breaking enemy lines with terrifying precision. Finally, she reached the enemy command center, massive, fortified, bristling with defenses. The commander sneered, certain of victory. "You should have bowed, human," he shouted. "Now all of your soldiers will die." Sarah smiled faintly. She raised a hand. The apex predator bowed low, its head touching the ground, not to him, not to fear, but in recognition of her command. And then she stepped forward. With a single commanding shout, the beast leapt, smashing the gates, scattering the commander's soldiers. Sarah entered the command center, flanked by her loyal soldiers and the apex predator. The commander's eyes widened in disbelief. How is this possible?" Sarah's eyes were cold, her voice was steady. "Because we do not bow to fear, we do not bow to tyrants, and we do not bow to you." The apex predator roared, shaking the room. The commander fell to his knees, terrified. His empire, his fleet, his power, all crumbled in that instant. Outside, the battlefield had fallen silent. Enemy soldiers surrendered, fleets retreated. Smoke rose across the horizon, marking the end of the battle. Sarah stood atop the command center, her soldiers surrounding her. The apex predator knelt beside her, its glowing eyes fixed on her face. For the first time, she allowed herself to breathe. The galaxy had watched. The weakest recruit, mocked and abandoned, had risen. Not by weapons alone, not by technology, but by courage, loyalty, and the bond she shared with the deadliest creature in the universe. And in that moment, she understood something profound. Power does not demand fear. Power demands respect. And the apex predator had given her both. News of the victory spread faster than light. The council convened in a panic. Reports streamed in. HumanityFYeah had defeated the strongest predator, commanded entire fleets, and inspired soldiers across systems. "She is beyond control," one counselor whispered. "Impossible," another said. "She bows to no one," the eldest counselor finally admitted. "And yet, the apex predator bows to her. The galaxy must accept it." Sarah Vale looked at her soldiers, then at the predator. She raised her hand. The beast lowered its head in a gesture of loyalty and recognition, not submission, not fear, but a bow, a symbol of trust, respect, and the bond forged in fire and battle. The galaxy had changed. One human, one monster, and a bond stronger than any weapon, and they would never be forgotten.